Helix piercing or snug piercing? Can't decide between the two of them? Well, I've got a video for you coming up next on Pros and Cons by a Piercer, episode number 55. So stick around. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio located here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So, I'm an expert. I pierce professionally. I've done numerous versions of these piercings over the years, and I know a lot. Today's topic came from one of our viewers, longtime viewers. She's commented a number of times. Calamity Natalie. Thank you for the topic. One problem though, when you say Helix, what piercing are you talking about? Because a lot of people have this confusion over what it should be called. When I first started piercing, in the majority of my piercing career, upper ear cartilage piercings, or cartilage piercings, is what we called this. They would go flat through that flat area of the ear, and then usually done with a ring or a stud. Recently, everybody started calling them helix piercings, and the whole thing was, well, it's the helix of the ear. It's the helix of the ear. This is the helix. No, it isn't. It isn't the helix. The anatomy term for the area that we pierce is the scapula. So a scapula piercing is an upper ear cartilage piercing. Helix piercings are, a helix is this ridge that wraps around the outside of the ear. Thus, it's the helix of the circle, starting down where we do daith piercings and continuing up, with most people ending about mid-ear right here. That ridge kind of stops. Most common version of a helix piercing would be, of course, industrial piercings, which are often done helix to helix. Snug piercings, snugs have always been snugs. They're located right here in this mid area, kind of below where the helix stops. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of cover all three of them. So we're going to talk about upper ear cartilage piercings, we're going to talk about helix piercings, and we're going to talk about snugs. I just want to make it clear, when I say helix piercing, I'm talking about a piercing through that ridge of tissue that goes perpendicular to wherever it is, not an upper ear cartilage that goes this way, through the scapula. With that out of the way, we're going to break this down into 5 different topics. The first one being anatomy, the second one being placement, the third one being healing, the fourth one being jewelry choices, and the fifth one being living with the piercing. So let's start out with anatomy. With the snug, it needs to be pronounced enough. It's kind of usually more heel-shaped. It's kind of like a lot of the different ridges of your ear, like a rook or a daith or etc. However, this one tends to be more rounded topped. It needs to be wide enough to support the piercing, and it has to be deep enough to support the piercing so that it doesn't migrate easily. With the helix, the ridge has to be large enough that it can be pierced safely. Too far this way, too far that way. With helix piercings, if you pinch down on the top of your ear, you'll notice they're kind of fatty on the outside, and then you feel that ridge underneath. It needs to be through that ridge of cartilage to help support it. If it gets out into just that kind of fatty tissue, it's probably going to heal maybe, but it's going to be more prone to rejection. Cartilage piercings or upper ear cartilage piercings can be done pretty much anywhere in that area in the flat tissue. They're done perpendicular to it. The only concerns would be jewelry choices and where it's at. If you do want to wear a ring in it, even if you're not piercing initially with a ring, sometimes the outer helix, this outer area at the back of the ear, will kind of fold over more so than on other people. So there needs to be enough room there that if you are going to wear a ring, that it can wrap around it. So that's where anatomy comes into play. Which moves us on to placement. Placement with the Snug, it usually is trying to be as deep into that area as possible. We usually will do it at a slight downward angle depending on the shape, because most people, it kind of curves, that bowl area on the inside kind of curves outward a little bit. So we want it as perpendicular as possible through that. There really needs to be enough tissue there to support jewelry. Usually I suggest that the pronunciation needs to be roughly about a half or a quarter of an inch, and the width needs to be at least 5/16 of an inch. Maybe a little bit shorter, a little bit different from person to person. But that placement should be right, dead on straight. Sometimes we'll do it so that it matches some of the other anatomy of the ear, or if you have like a tracheus piercing, it's kind of cool to have that line straight through your ear. With Helix piercings, it needs to be done so that it's straight through the flap. If the flap's like this, it needs to be like this. It doesn't need to, we don't want this, we don't want this, we don't want this. We want it straight through at a 90-degree angle. As far as placement on the ear, it can be done pretty much anywhere that ridge is. I personally think that the front one with the low, behind the flap where it hangs over the flap looks very elegant and really cool. And in a lot of ways, I think it looks cooler than the forward helix. And it's a little bit more rare than the forward helix. So that's another possibility that you can do with your helix piercing. Usually, like I said, they need to be straight and kind of match that curvature. So curvature should be like at an angle where it's like so. Think sun rays. With cartilage piercings or upper ear cartilage piercings, I kind of already covered this, but it needs to be straight through that cartilage at a 90-degree angle. Sometimes people's cartilage kind of tilts one way or another, so it needs to be adjusted to match that. Also, the other thing you always want to take into consideration is if the person is going to be eventually wearing a ring, is having enough area there, or having it far enough out to the edge that a ring's going to comfortably wrap around the outside of the ear without causing pressure to the piercing itself. So that brings us on to healing. With this one, I have to say that snugs tend to be the most pain in the ass of the three, to use a technical term. Because of its location in that mid-ear, it gets a lot of contact with surfaces, etc. It doesn't get caught as readily as other piercings. It's a little bit more in the ear, but because of where it's located at, it is more prone to traumatic issues, grumpiness, etc. during the healing process. It can be a little bit more difficult to heal, and it is a little bit more prone to migration than the other two. With helix piercings, you just basically have to isolate it. Because it's on that outer edge or rim of the ear, it's easy to knock, it's easy to catch the jewelry. They really need to be isolated for that whole healing period. They heal at about the same rate as upper ear cartilage piercings, usually anywhere, if you're really lucky, 8 weeks. If you're an average Joe, somewhere around the 3 to 4 month period. Upper ear cartilage piercings, they tend to just be one of those piercings. Like I said, all cartilage piercings tend to be grumpy. They tend to be more prone to problems. It's very important that they are isolated, things are kept away from them, etc. So it's kind of the same thing with all three of these. As far as healing, I would say, as far as like the order, I would say the snug's the more difficult. Middle of it would be the helix, and the easiest of the three, I would say, would be an upper ear cartilage piercing. That brings us on to jewelry choices. The fun part, the part everybody likes to accessorize. With the snug, you are stuck with a curved barbell. You need that curvature to kind of sculpt the piercing into the area and fit the natural curvature of everything that's going on there. So when you pierce it, it's probably going to be a little bit on the long side. Once it heals, you can probably go to a slightly smaller one, but for the most part, you're stuck with that type of jewelry. When it comes to helix piercings, I really advise having them done initially, especially if they're on that thinner edge towards the top in non-flap area, that they're done with a straight barbell or labret stud or something that is stud style. You can wear rings in them, but it's going to put a lot of pressure and a lot of movement on the piercing during the healing process. After it heals, you have a pretty good variety of stuff to wear in it. Like I said, I guess I should cover this forward helix area. Usually you need a ring that's going to be large enough to wrap around the area. Sometimes that can get knocked around a little bit, so sometimes it's not the best option for everyone. But it can be done. I've had numerous clients heal them out with rings without issues. But when we get to this upper ear area where you're going to cause kind of a flapping effect, I would really advise a post. Upper ear cartilage piercings, I pierce them with rings for a majority of my career. The rings do have more movement because you have the up and down movement. They are larger. They're going to come in contact with stuff. So yes, studs are a better option when it comes to healing them. The problem with studs is they need to be oversized and long enough to allow for inflammation. And those can get caught quite often if you're not careful. That moves us on to living with the piercings. All three of these piercings have a tendency to be fine for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden get knocked just right or slept on just right, or you're getting sick or something, and they'll suddenly flare up. It's just one of those piercings. Because they're on your ears, you have to be really conscious of wearing things like headphones, helmets, etc., earmuffs, anything that comes in contact with your ears for pretty much the rest of your life. You would avoid jewelry that has sharp edges, points, etc., that are going to be more prone to catching on things. Out of them, I would say probably the least impacted as far as getting knocked around would be an upper ear cartilage piercing done with a like labret stud that's fit perfect to the size. It's going to have the least amount of contact with stuff and knocking around. But for the most part, you just have to kind of isolate the area and leave it alone. So that's everything I have to say today on this. If you have some questions, something I didn't cover, please leave a comment. If you'd like to add something to the discussion, please do that also. If you like merch, t-shirts, etc., check out our merch store. We have various different designs from the artists of the Skin Kitchen and myself. Tote bags, all kinds of fun stuff. Link is in the description. If you haven't done so already and you found the video helpful, please give us a thumbs up. We like it when you like it. It makes everybody like everything. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. We post roughly 4 to 5 videos a week covering tattooing and body piercing with a focus on education. If you are interested in any of this, please subscribe. I think you'll find it worthwhile. Till next time, here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Go out there, do something fun, and enjoy yourself.